Go to the Future Issue 1. Okay, this comic better be good because a lot of people think it is. The sheer fact that it has Silver and Shadow in it has me worried. Because Silver and Shadow are the worst examples of forgot about my powers. It's surprising that most of the first issue is colorless. It's a better parallel with Other M than I thought. But at least here it looks good and is actually shaded properly. Even if it's too rushed to have color in it. Sonic says in front of the Master Emerald's shrine that Eggman created the perfect weapon and beat him, and he looks injured. That's pretty dark. The Other M comic kinda started out on the status quo, with Sonic fighting Eggman. And it just happened that he won because of the genre's heavy plan. And the only victory that Eggman had was sending into another dimension. But here, it starts out in Meter Res, and we don't even see what his genre's heavy plan was at first. Sonic says that Eggman will never get the Chaos Emeralds, as there seems to be a shadow android in front of Eggman. If that's supposed to be what beat the heroes in this timeline, well, I normally compliment this as a moment of reality ensues. It's really not, because it's not like Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles have been teleported apart. It's not like a portal was summoned in their bodies. They're still intact. It's not like they got smacked so hard that it was like they were hit by a speeding train. It's more like they got beat up by a normal guy. I guess his super speed let him win. What about Sonic's super speed? This would be so much easier to actually be invested in if I saw the story from the beginning, instead of not knowing how he won. Because if he won with his super speed, I'm just wondering why that didn't happen for SE2 Shadow. Eggman says they won't win when they're dead, and tells Shadow to use Chaos Control. Or maybe someone else said Chaos Control. Something common sense and realistic that would have happened in SE2, if Eggman had been thinking properly, is that Eggman would have told Shadow to use Chaos Control. I guess in SE2 we had the excuse where he just met Shadow and was really used to not using someone with teleportation power against his enemies. So he just wasn't creative enough to figure out how broken that power would be when actually used as a direct attack. He's still supposed to be a genius though. We see narration saying that between the planes of reality, a separate plane exists, where nothing but the energy of the Chaos Emerald and Master Emerald exist. Even though those emeralds exist in physical reality in Sonic's universe. And the Soul Emeralds are in the Soul Dimension, so is the Soul Emerald's energy here too? So what, does it mean the Emerald's energies extend to multiple different planes of existence? I guess so. It would explain how the kindergartens that died were able to live on within the Chaos Force, I guess. Their souls went into it. So this energy plane is the starting place of Chaos Control. Another dimension entirely is that starting place. That seems unnecessary. I figured the starting place was the actual plane of existence that Sonic was holding the emerald in. Anyways, Sonic transmits his consciousness to the Sanctuary, and he's too weak to go supersonic. That makes no sense whatsoever. Especially not after I read the Metal Virus saga, where him turning supersonic got rid of his Metal Virus infection. And he could do it just fine even though he was literally passing out. Granted, this isn't IDW, but even IDW makes more sense. What about in Sonic Generations, where Sonic was crushed by a giant robot hand, and turning super healed him up? According to this, that would have killed him. I figured Sonic would be able to go super regardless of how tired he was. Here, Sonic says that if he goes super, he'll die. Yeah, that makes sense. We all know Super Sonic isn't really invincible. This sure is running off some strange new rules. Wasn't Sonic exhausted in Sonic Unleashed just before he turned super? He was just lying on the floor. And he still turned super. Anyways, he has to use Chaos Control to send the emeralds away from Eggman. To another dimension entirely. Even if that'll kill him as well. But Eggman would just take over the world anyways without the emeralds. There's not much of a point to doing this. He's Eggman. If all he uses the emeralds for is batteries, then he could build a really great battery and not even need the emeralds. Imagine if he made a microverse battery. Then out of complete nowhere, Tikal interrupts him and doesn't want to let him send the emeralds away forever. But she doesn't have any kind of logic in disagreeing. She doesn't explain herself. Not even like I did. She immediately goes on to say that she can remove the emeralds for a time. So if they're not necessary for the universe to survive, then why does she care? Why would she remove the emeralds at all? Why would she put the universe in danger? Isn't it obvious that all the emeralds do is cause people to fight over them and abuse their powers? Why doesn't she realize that Sonic has the right idea? She should say that maybe some future heroes might need the emeralds, and maybe that's her logic. She says that now that Knuckles is gone, Sonic has to take his place in this right. Sure is dark that the comic starts out with Tails and Knuckles dead, and I thought Other M was dark. At least he never killed Tails. At least in the Other M comic, Knuckles was actually used as a character in most of his issues, even if it was an alternate universe Knuckles. Same goes for Tails. This seems to care even less about Tails and Knuckles. Tikal says that Sonic's soul has to be bound to the Chaos Emerald to become a link between this world and the Emerald, and eventually find the right person to bring the Emeralds back, and she has faith that he'll know who. Why doesn't she tell him who it is? He could be searching in all the wrong places and never find him thanks to her. So Shadow is told to retrieve the Chaos Emeralds, and just being near them causes the brainwashing device to get freed from him because of an explosion of chaos energy that goes through his body. When normally him being around the emeralds doesn't cause explosions of chaos energy to come towards him. Because Master Emerald looks like it does, I can only assume this is because Tikal's making the emeralds go away, and not just a Deus Ex Machina from merely approaching a powerful gem. It's still surprising though. I'd expect that either he'd be killed from being shocked by that chaos energy, or be powered up by it, if it's willing to damage a device on him from proximity. Why wouldn't it damage him too? I never knew he was supposed to be just Shadow with a brainwashing device on him because it was all in black and white. So that's an interesting twist. That was explained in the description, but that's what happens when you don't color the art. It's such a convenience for him that he's not roboticized. Apparently this is a universe without roboticization. So Shadow jumps onto Eggman and kills him as Eggman looks really weird. He should have said Chaos Control during that to explain why his face looked so weird. I won't argue with his decision, I just wish we saw Eggman get punched and smacked around a lot for some cathartic humiliation. You'd think Shadow would be angry enough to want that after what he was forced to do. So Shadow despairs and cries because he was brainwashed into killing all of his friends. He actually acknowledged them as his friends. Wow. I'd never see that in IDW. After Shadow sees Sonic approaching the Emerald, Silver wakes up because of an alarm clock and reveals that he's kept dreaming about that very scene. How convenient. If Tikal is doing this to him, wouldn't she just go talk to him directly? She did that in SC1 all the time. In fact, if she did that, then he would know that it's not just a dream and that he should dismiss it as not something to care about. What an idiot she is! So we see a scene that kinda humanizes Silver as he tries to get something to eat for breakfast in the morning. We don't get to learn what exact kind of cereal he likes to eat, just to eat cereal, so that's a shame. And he's not enthusiastic at eating old fried rice. I'm thinking of him as being in a college dorm at this point. Otherwise, why is he living alone? Then Blaze knocks on his door and says he's half an hour late for his shift, and she says that he's lucky that she's the restaurant owner's daughter, or he'd have been fired the first time he slept through his alarm. At least Blaze has some creativity with her. Suddenly, it turns out that Silver's boss is Big the Cat in this universe, or maybe he's just his descendant. I'm just wondering how Big the Cat was lucky enough to procreate. No wonder I assumed it was Big at first. He says he can't keep this place running without him, which at least explains why he hasn't fired him, and he tells Silver to get back in the kitchen. Blaze thanks her father, who has a sweet interaction with her, and Silver wishes his restaurant used paper plates instead because he hates doing the dishes. How would paper plates still be common knowledge 200 years into the future? He's told to clear a table for Blaze, and Blaze gives takeout to Shadow, since Shadow's immortal. And she's so casual about it, like, you'd think Shadow would be famous, but no. Maybe she got her, oh my god, it's you, out of the way, and we're only seeing their end reaction. It humanizes him a little that he asked for one of the little soy sauce packets, like he's a normal person. Then Silver looks alarmed at seeing Shadow, and Shadow politely thanks Blaze and says to keep the change. Then he follows Shadow out of the restaurant. Shadow tells Sonic that's too dangerous, and he's been wrong before, somehow. Thanks to Call. Now I'm just wondering I saw the time he was wrong. Because what happened to "you'll know when you see him"? So how could he be wrong? Silver looks at him and says that it is him, and the story ends with one final typo. I'm just relieved that I didn't have Silver suck at using his powers yet. Since Shadow killed Eggman, there is no longer a reason for the emerald to be sent away because Shadow is broken free from brainwashing. And if Tikal was omniscient enough to know about Silver already, then she would and should have also known that Shadow would break free of brainwashing and kill Eggman, the only person Sonic was trying to hide the emeralds from. So Tikal should have told Sonic the future if she knows about the future enough to know about Silver, and not hidden the emeralds away. Or, to make this comic's premise a little more feasible, she could have told Sonic that in the near future, villains other than Eggman would try to get the emeralds, and so it is fine to hide them. But come on, Shadow would still be there to defend the emeralds. But naturally, she might think that if he can be brainwashed with the device at all, then maybe he can't be trusted as their guardian. Because what if another person capable of making such a device comes up? But that's a pretty big if in a world without Snively. What if someone with magic that can brainwash him comes up? That's more likely. This issue is by Evan Stanley, and was about Sonic dying to a brainwashed Shadow and telling Tikal to take away the emeralds from the world for a couple hundred years, where he'll wait for Silver to come around for him. And Silver gets humanized as he wakes up from a dream about that and goes to work at a restaurant like a normal person, so it's explained how he makes a living, and lives on his own. And Blaze is in a creative new position in life too. It started off surprisingly dark, though it would have been worse if we actually saw the fight that defeated the heroes. If only we saw Shadow beat up Eggman. But it does make sense that he was quick, because that's what he did in one of the endings of Shadow the Hedgehog. But in that ending, he didn't have a reason to be really furious with him and do this like here. I was shocked that the issue was in black and white like Other M. It was more of a parallel with it than I thought. The comic is actually in color for later issues. It being surprisingly dark with gore in it is another thing that surprised me. Because I assumed that this would be a later comic in the franchise. But apparently the first issue came out in 2007, so it really was an old comic like Other M. I guess the story wasn't really bad. It was too dark and disturbing. But hopefully it's mostly not like that and just had to have a dark first issue to set up the premise. It is good writing that Eggman won because of a surprisingly realistic outcome, where he actually thought to use brainwashing on Shadow, rather than the dark thing happening because of forced writing. So this is better than Flynn writing. It's creative and kinda makes sense. After all the times Eggman used brainwashing in the past, including AOSCH and Boom, what took him so long to do this? The premise of the series was still forced though, because it only happened because Sonic insisted on not turning super because he thinks he'll die from the transformation, even though turning super unintuitively heals him. So the whole reason the comic happens is because in this particular universe apparently, they changed the rules about how Supersonic works. Which has to mean that in this comic, Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations didn't happen, because obviously Sonic would have died if that was the case. It's not explained why the whole comic happened, considering that Tikal could have just trusted Shadow to guard the emeralds instead of actually sending them away for 200 years. Because if she knows that Silver is going to be born, she'd know that Shadow's not always going to be brainwashed either. It wasn't full of plot holes or frustrating characters for the most part, and it's interesting enough. I just can't enjoy it because of how dark the beginning was. It gives me a bad feeling when remembering it. You'd think a fight where Shadow won against the heroes in a realistic outcome would be because he used Chaos Control as a weapon to teleport them apart, or telefrag them at the ground or something. But no, he just beat them up normally. So it doesn't feel like entirely the inevitable realistic result of Eggman having Shadow on his side. It should have been explained that Shadow froze time, and that's how he won against the heroes so easily. I just don't like how it reminds me of Other M being a gory, colorless comic.